Welcome to the Dominion Sports Football Podcast, the very first one of its kind. And I mean, what better time to start your high school football podcast than during the playoffs? Of course, we missed a week there. The first week of the playoffs is over, in the books. Half of the field has been eliminated and half moves on and half are still alive. Now, what we're going to do on this podcast is very simple today. We're just going to go through each game from Class 3 and up and make a prediction on each game. Now, listen, for the Class 1 and Class 2 schools, this is not a slight to your schools. A lot of talent in these schools. But right now, we're trying to keep our videos short, and we felt the best thing to do is to take the biggest gains from the biggest divisions. So as of right now, we're going Class 3 and up, and we're going to go ahead and get right into it. The very first game that we're going to cover, that will happen on Saturday, not Friday, will be Hopewell versus Norcom. Hopewell, of course, sitting right now at 11-0. Norcom from Portsmouth sitting at 7-4. Two very good teams, and you know, there's always at least one game per year, 5-1, where either the 5 or 4 seed either upsets the one or they give that one a very hard time. I mean, you can pretty much set your book by it. Happens at least once a year. I do not think, however, that this will be that game. Hopewell, a very good team, very well coached. I think they win this one convincingly, and they win this one 38-13. Next on the bracket, this one is on Friday night, and this one is between York and Phoebus. Great year so far from York. They're sitting at 11-0. They've had a lot of close wins, the guys from Yorktown. They've pulled out a lot of them, but they're at 11-0 right now, and they're undefeated. And if any coach can tell you, it is not easy to go undefeated, no matter how good your team is, no matter what your schedule looks like. It is hard to get 14, 15, 16, and 17, and 18-year-olds to play on a consistent basis week in and week out for months. The high school football season is months, and they're sitting at 11-0. However, this team that they're going against in Phoebus is a buzzsaw. They're a buzzsaw. They've put up 70 in games. They've put up 50 in games. This is a good football team. The reason that they are the 3 seed and not the 2 seed is because they have a loss. Who's that loss to? Lake Taylor, another powerhouse. How much did they lose that game by? 1 point. I think Phoebus is not really an upset, but I think Phoebus does pull the technical upset here, and I think they win this one slightly convincingly. I'll go Phoebus 37, York 14. Moving down the bracket, we're going to Goochland and Skyline. Now listen, Skyline, only time I've really seen Skyline was I saw them play Independence at the very beginning of this year, and they have an explosive offense. They put up a lot of points on the board. However, Goochland, who just defeated Independence, they shut down Independence, something that Skyline wasn't able to do as much in week 1. Again, same thing. This is that 5 versus that 1. 1 seed being Goochland, Skyline being the 5 seed. However, I think that Goochland, with their defense and their quick strike ability on offense, I think that they're going to be a little bit too much for Skyline. I say they win this game 29-14. Now we're moving down the bracket a little bit more, and we go over to James Monroe and Brentsville District. Now, I know a lot about this James Monroe football team, and one thing that this James Monroe football team does consistently is they play bigger schools early in the year. You look at who James Monroe played. They played Class 5 Stafford. They played Class 6 Riverbend. They played Class 5 Mountain View. And I believe they lost all those games. No, they beat Stafford. They did beat Stafford 21-7. But what this does is that prepares this team for the teams that they're going to play in the future. For example, Brentsville District. That's who they have now. Is Brentsville District a great football team? Yes, they are. Now, James Monroe has had their troubles. Don't get me wrong. They've lost games, and they've lost them big. They lost to Mountain View 55-15, and they lost to Eastern View 35-7. And the Riverbend, who hasn't made the playoffs in Class 6, they lost 22-6. However, since then, they really seemed to turn their season around. They defeated a good King George team. They came back around, beat a stingy Spotsylvania team. and they really came on a roll. And last week they put up 60 points against Central. Brentsville District, however, is not a team to just be taken lightly. It's coming in here today on Friday at 8-3. They again have played a tough schedule, but they defeated Mason by a score of 32-21. If I had to make a prediction here, though, I would say that because of the schedule that they played, because of the opponents that they have familiarized themselves with, weathered that storm, and they came back and they're sitting at 8-3. I say they're battle tested. I say they win this game by a score of 28-20. Moving over to the right side of the bracket, we have Heritage versus Liberty Christian. Liberty Christian out of Lynchburg, Virginia. Liberty Christian comes into this game at 7-3, not to be slept on, obviously. They've had a very good year. And Heritage really doing what Heritage does. They're back in the top. They're sitting at 11-1. They're also from Lynchburg, Virginia. Kind of been a mainstay out there. I'm going to go ahead and go with Heritage in this game over Liberty Christian by a score of 35-13. Spotswood and Rockbridge County. I think Spotswood might be the best team in their half of their bracket, in their region. And this isn't taken away from Rockbridge County, who is only the 3 seed. So 2-3 seeds, normally those games are close. They just defeated Brookville 24-14. But it's very similar to what I just said about Phoebus. I just think Spotswood, in a similar manner, is just a buzzsaw. And buzzsaws are normally hard to stop. I think Spotswood Heritage is going to be the region championship between those two. And I think it's going to be a good one because I had Spotswood winning this game by a score of 35-7. All right. Moving down to the last 2 games in the Class 3 bracket. We have Lord Bodacourt versus Hidden Valley. Lord Bodacourt has been a very good team for years, coming out of Daleville, Virginia, and I don't see a difference this year. Very good, very well coached. I'm going to have to go ahead and say that those guys are going to win their football game by a score of 35-26. Northside and Magna Vista, again, 2 teams that have made runs. Northside, obviously, the Northside Vikings, been a really good team. They've been featured on various broadcasts throughout the state of Virginia. Game day broadcast, which is centered in Northern Virginia in the Ashburn area, has traveled down to Northside. This is how good of a program that is being run down there. That's not to take away from Magna Vista. Magna Vista has also had a good team for years. And, they come in this year sitting at 8-3. Again, 2-3. Not really an upset here. But I'm going to go ahead and pick Magna Vista. I think that they have athletes all over the field. And I think that they're going to come in hungry here. And I think they're going to win. And I'm going to go ahead and say that they're going to win that game by a score of 26-23. I think it's going to be a real close one. Moving to the Class 4 bracket. Powerhouse Lake Taylor versus Warwick. I think Lake Taylor is yet again, similar to Phoebus, a buzzsaw team. I just called Phoebus a buzzsaw. And who did Phoebus lose to? They lost to Lake Taylor. Now, let's be very clear here. Lake Taylor has lost 2 games this year. And they weren't particularly close, okay? They lost to Maury out of Norfolk, Virginia, 49-7, and then they lost another game to Varina, 58-10. Okay, so as good as this team is, they're not perfect. Okay, they have a lot of flaws, and they're not unbeatable. Okay, but this is a team that puts up a lot of points offensively. If you look at their score, they put up scores of 64, 63. They had a game where they won 57-56. Okay, they put up 62 points. This team can score, and they can score quick on you. Warwick, coming out of Newport News, however, is sitting at 7-4. Another good football team, and they can give them a chance. Again, I said it before, at least once a year, a 5 beats a 1 or gives them a chance. I don't think this will happen, but I do think it'll be high scoring, very consistent of what Lake Taylor has done all year. I'll go ahead and say, however, considering Warwick's defense is a little bit better, they'll hold them under 50. So I'll say that this final score of this game will be Lake Taylor 45, Warwick 30. Now moving down into Churchland versus Kings Fort. Kings Fort has to be feeling good right now after their upset over War Hill, but they didn't make it look like an upset. They looked like the better team, winning that game 25-8. This is a 4-7 ball club who dominated their first round matchup 25-8, and they're going up against a Churchland team who has been good all year. They've had their flaws, of course. Again, this is very similar to Lake Taylor. They have a loss, and that loss isn't particularly close. They got shut out 42-0 by Class 5 Maury. Maury, of course, however, is a team that we'll be talking about later. Very good football team. They also lost to Lake Taylor 37-25 earlier in the year. Kind of a back and forth matchup. I think Churchland really wants a piece of Lake Taylor. I just picked Lake Taylor to win, so they're going to have to go ahead and win that game. Kings Fork has been a good run. They got the surprise win last week, and I'm sure they're on cloud 9, but I think Churchland this week, the boys from Portsmouth, are going to bring them back down to earth on Friday night, and I'm going to go ahead and go 33-7 Churchland over Kings Fork. Moving down to Louisa County versus Patrick Henry Ashland. Now, Patrick Henry Roanoke is still in the playoffs as well, but this is Patrick Henry Ashland that we're talking about playing Louisa County. Louisa County, I mean, what can you say about them? They're consistently dominant year in and year out. I think they haven't lost a regular season game in years. They defeated Massaponax, who was a Fredericksburg Class 6 now power with a blocked field goal. What can you say about them other than they're just a consistent powerhouse? But they're going up against the Patrick Henry team, who surprised a lot of people last week in their dominance. Now, Spotsylvania last week was in fact injured, but this is a Spotsylvania team who defeated Eastern View early in the year, breaking a 37 regular season game winning streak, and they defeated that Eastern View team. And Spotsylvania got handled by Patrick Henry 56-6. So Patrick Henry obviously has talent and quick strike ability, but Louisa County, man, they've been here before. They've been here year in and year out. They're consistently good. They're consistently at the top. They consistently have top athletes. I'm going to go Louisa County 33, Patrick Henry 17. I think Patrick Henry makes it tight for a little bit. Maybe at halftime it's only a 3-point game, and then Louisa County makes their adjustments and they win this game. Coming down the bracket, not really a surprise that these two are meeting up, but we're surprised at the seeding. 7th ranked Dinwiddie versus 3rd ranked Eastern View. Now, Dinwiddie's been through a lot. They've lost a good amount of games this year. They lost to North Stafford. They lost to Massaponax. They went out and they even lost a game to Prince George, I think it was. Yeah, in overtime. Okay, they've lost 5 games. They're sitting at 6-5 losses to Hopewell as well. But they've kind of gotten it together in the past couple weeks. After that Hopewell loss, they went and put 63 points on the board 2 straight weeks in a row. Then they went and they put up 44 against Dale. Okay, now they lost that game against Dale 46-44, but their offense has gotten it clicking in the past 4 weeks. These are their stats offensively in the past 4 weeks: 63, 63, 44, and 49. 49 coming last week, and a win against Monacan. I wouldn't say they're back, but they're a good football team in that. But this Eastern View team, very similarly to Louisa County, is back where they are. And they did lose earlier this year to Spotsylvania, their first regular season loss in a while. But this is an Eastern View team, man, that they're not going to let that rattle them. They're ready to jump back on their horse and get back to playing football. This is a team that year in and year out puts out talent, that has a lot of offense, has a lot of it. I think they've only had 1 game this year where they scored less than 30 points. And defensively, they haven't been slouches either. Even in their loss, they gave up 18. Okay, so this is an Eastern View team that I think can slow down this Dinwiddie team. This Dinwiddie team's been hot, though. This Dinwiddie team has been hot, and we've seen Dinwiddie go on runs before and win championships. So do not be surprised if Dinwiddie pulls this game out. However, I will predict that the Eastern View Cyclones win this game, and I'm going to say that this is going to be close. I think it's going to be high scoring, Even though Eastern View's not particularly used to that, I do think they'll win this game, however, 36-30. Moving over to the other side of the bracket, Broad Run versus Loudoun Valley. Listen, Broad Run is one of the best teams in the state, and we saw this a couple weeks ago when they went up against Stonebridge. That's not to take away from Loudoun Valley. Loudoun Valley is also another very good football team. However, Broad Run is just a buzzsaw when they want to be. And if Mitch Griffiths is healthy, I don't know if there's a team in the state that can beat these guys. With that being said, I'm going to have to pick Broad Run to win this game. They had a tight one last week against Millbrook, but Millbrook was no scrubs. Millbrook came into that game at 7-3, and they put together a valiant effort. The quarterback, I believe his name was Booza from Millbrook, really put together a good game. But Broad Run to me is a buzzsaw, and to me they're on a mission this year. And I say they'll go ahead and win this game by a score of 38-13. This to me is going to be the game of the week, this upcoming game that I'm talking about. I think a lot of people have kind of overlooked this game in favor of a Broad Run Tuscarora showdown. Liberty versus Tuscarora. Now listen, the Liberty Eagles out of Belton, Virginia are undefeated. They're undefeated. Now, have they blown teams out this year? No. Have they dominated teams across the board? No. Have they played the biggest and baddest schools? No. But they're undefeated. And it's like I said before about York. It is not easy to go undefeated in high school football. And I think there's a lot of guys at Liberty who feel kind of disrespected because they're hearing people say, oh, it's going to be Broad Run Tuscarora. It's going to be Broad Run Tuscarora. Liberty is the higher seed here. However, Tuscarora is another good football team. And very similarly to Phoebus, they have one loss this year. Who is that loss to? To the team that I just said may be the best team in the state in Broad Run. They've been really good, and they've been a buzzsaw as well. Their closest game this year has been a 13-12 win against Woodgrove. It's going to be a good one. With that being said, I do think Tuscarora will win this game, but I don't think it's going to be a run over like a lot of people think. I think this one will be close. I think it will be dirty. I'm going to say 24-20 Tuscarora. Moving down to the last part of the bracket, the last 4 teams, the last 2 games. And man, let me tell you, these are going to be some good games down there in the mountains. Man, these are going to be 2 good games. If you can get out there and watch these 2 games, find a way. There's a streaming service somehow. Watch these 2 games. First game that we're going to get into is Salem versus George Washington. And I mean, hey, the Salem Spartans are back. I mean, were they ever really gone? I mean, last year they went 7-4, made the playoffs. There's a lot of teams in the state that would love that kind of success. But we know Salem Spartans, that's normally a down year for them. But they're back. They're at 10-1. They don't have a in-state loss. They do have a loss this year, and a pretty dominant one, to Martinsburg out in West Virginia. But, you know, they're undefeated against Virginia competition right now. They're sitting at 10-1 total, 10-0 against Virginia teams, and they're going up against George Washington from Danville. And one thing Danville always seems to have is talented, speedy players. And man, I think this is going to be a really good football game. But when Salem gets the ball rolling the way that they have it rolling now, it's pretty hard for them to be stopped. And I'm going to have to go with Salem in this game. I think George Washington, however, breaks off some big-time plays, and they're going to make this one close for a while. I'll go Salem, however, 38-20. And moving down to Glask and Pulaski County, another big-time matchup. This one's going to be very hard. I know Pulaski's only 2 losses come from Salem, who I just talked about, and I believe Heritage. And EC Glass has been a great football team this year too. This is going to be a back-and-forth game, a back-and-forth brawl. And this one could come down to a last-second field goal. And that's what I'm going to predict. I'm going to predict that this one comes down 27-26. I'm going to go with Pulaski County. I think that they felt that they could have beaten Salem. And I'm not saying whether they're going to beat Salem or not. We'll see next week. But I think that they're going to be motivated to get there. And I think it's going to come down to a last-second play, last-second two-point conversion. It's going to be a good one, man. And I got Pulaski County winning that one in a very close game. Moving to Class 5. Listen, we have Salem and Woodside. Salem from Virginia Beach, Woodside from Newport News. This one will be at the Virginia Beach Sports Complex at 7 p.m. on Friday. This is going to be a good football game. Salem has athletes all over the field, and Salem has always seemed to be a team that has always been good. You always see these Salem Spartan teams from Virginia Beach always have talent. They're always up there 9, 10 wins every single year, and they just can't seem to get past the best teams in the 757. Woodside just came off a big time win. They won 7-0 over Princess Anne. Really both teams coming off shutout performances, so obviously two good defenses there. I'll pick Salem to make it to the regional championship game. We'll see what they can do from there, but I think they'll win this game. Moving on to Maury versus Nansemond River. Both of these two teams, so last year Maury got bounced by Highland Springs. The year before, it was Nansemond River that got bounced by Highland Springs. Maury, really, they're just on a mission, and everybody they have played has been dominated by this Maury Commodores team. There are athletes all over the field for this team. This is a dangerous football team. There is not a game that I believe that they've scored under 30 points this year. And they only have one game where they score under 40. And that was they have two games. One was against Ocean Lakes, who they dominated 31-6. And the other one was against Norcom, who they only put up 33 against. This is a good football team. And there's not much more to be said than that. They're a buzzsaw. Nansemond River has to be feeling good about themselves, of course. They just came off of a big-time victory, really an upset victory over a good Indian River team. And again, they dominated Indian River, won 38-13. But I'm going to have to go with Maury here just because of the fact that I think they're a buzzsaw. I don't think that there's anybody in that bracket, in that region, that can touch them. I'm going to go ahead and say Maury wins this game by a score of 45-6. And that's not a slight to Nansemond River. That's how good I think Maury is. Moving down into what is pretty much essentially the 804 or the Richmond part of the bracket, where you have Highland Springs, the 4-time defending state champions, versus the Varina and resurging Blue Devils. Oh man, this is going to be another good football game between two Richmond powers for years. Obviously, Highland Springs doesn't need me to hype them up. They know who they are. You know who they are. You know how good they are. And for those of you who might not know about Varina is no slouch either. Just to give you a little bit of what they've done this year, they won a game 78-0. Lake Taylor, who I talked about how good they are, because I do think they are good, they beat them 58-10. At Patrick Henry Ashland, who won their first playoff game 56-6, they beat them 48-10. Okay, this is a buzzsaw. Highland Springs only beat them 27-20 in their last matchup at Highland Springs. This is going to be a very, very good football game. It'll be close. It'll be back and forth. One moment you might think one team's going to win. The other you think this team's going to win. But at the end of the day, Highland Springs is Highland Springs. And I think that until somebody knocks them off, they're going to be the favorite to win in every game. I say that they win this game in an even closer game, even more low scoring. I say they win this game 20-16 over the Varina Blue Devils. Manchester versus Deep Run is next. Manchester is not the team that they were last year in terms of just whoever they took the field against. They just dominated. They blew out. But don't be mistaken, this is still a very good football team. This is the same football team that went up 16-0 at halftime over Highland Springs. And they haven't lost to anybody else. And they dominated everyone else that's on their schedule. With that being said, Deep Run out of Glen Allen, Virginia, has to be taken seriously. One reason for that, they're undefeated. What did I tell you about undefeated teams? I don't care what your schedule is. I don't care who you are. going undefeated in high school football is a difficult task. I think that this is a close one. I think that this is one of those games that in the third quarter, it's a one-possession game. However, I think it'll be in favor of Manchester, and I think Manchester will be able to control the game in the fourth quarter. I'll go ahead and take Manchester in this game 33-20. Moving over into what is basically the Loudoun County side of the bracket, we have Stonebridge versus Potomac Falls. Now, Stonebridge, year in and year out, very similarly to Highland Springs on the other side of the bracket, year in and year out, consistently has dominated Loudoun County. Now, they might have a trip up here and there to Broad Run or Tuscarora, but I have some news for you. We already covered Broad Run and Tuscarora. Why? Because they're in Class 4 this year. And Potomac Falls, they came off a big defensive win. Potomac Falls obviously has the talented Jalen Coker, and he may make some plays, but at the end of the day, the size of Stonebridge, the single wing offense of Stonebridge, I think it'll all be too much. I know Ty Felton is still out. I think he's out for the year. But Stonebridge is just again a buzzsaw. I say that they'll win this game by a score of 37-30. They'll probably get their backups in early. This is a team that's planning to make a playoff run, so as soon as they go up 30, they'll probably put in some backups and slow their game down. Last one in Ashburn will be between Briarwoods and Woodgrove. And my apologies, I think this game is actually going to be in Purcellville. I think this game will be at Woodgrove. These two teams played already, and Briarwoods dominated. Briarwoods dominated that game 28-0. Anytime you shut out a team, 28-0, you dominated. Now, of course, Woodgrove they're not the defending state champions. They moved up a bracket, but they are state champions. They do have a state championship. So they're not going to go out as easily as 28-0. Not this time. Not to defend their season, they're not. But I do believe Briarwoods will win this football game. Daniel Bruton out there coming from Forest Park has done good things, and he's getting Briarwoods back to where they used to be. I'll say the Briarwoods Falcons win this game by a score of 28-17 this time. I think Woodgrove put some points on the board in a do-or-die game. Moving into the last two teams of Class 5, we have number 1 seed Mountain View versus number 5 seed William and Fleming. And I know I've been teasing the 5-1 upset all episode long. I do not believe it's going to happen here either, and the reason for this is Mountain View is just going to be too much for William and Fleming. Athletes, size. Mountain View's planning on making a run here, and they have a chance to do it. William Fleming has had a good year. They're sitting at 4-7, however. They just beat Harrisonburg, who was an upset. Technically, it wasn't really. I do believe William and Fleming blew out Harrisonburg earlier in the year. Mountain View is just a better team, and when you get some of these teams from where William and Fleming is, like I believe they're from Roanoke, when they come up here and they play these Northern Virginia teams, when they play teams in Stafford, teams in Ashburn, they really just get overwhelmed. I believe that's going to happen here again, and I do believe it's going to be a big time performance for Mountain View. I think it's going to be over quickly, so if it's cold out there, go ahead and go home, because I do believe Mountain View will win this game by a score about 55-6. And moving down to North Stafford, Patrick Henry, again, pretty much the same thing as Mountain View, Mountain View, William and Fleming, same thing. Stafford team, Roanoke team. Patrick Henry's sitting at a 3 seed. They're a good football team. They're better than they were last year. Obviously, last week they beat Albemarle 57-14. They can put up points and put them up in a hurry, but Javon Swinton, Sean Ashbury, Jameer Boyd passing the ball. I think we are destined to see Mountain View versus North Stafford in the region semifinals, and they had a great game 1. I do believe North Stafford wins this game. I think they put up a lot of points similar to Mountain View. I'm going to go ahead and say that the final score of this game will be 59-21. And moving into the last bracket, the Class 6 bracket, and what is basically, again, the 7-5-7 part of the bracket, Oscar Smith versus Lansdowne. I mean, what can you say more about Oscar Smith? Similarly to Stonebridge, similarly to Highland Springs. Year in, year out, they have talent. Year in, year out, they bring it. They only lost to Highland Springs by 7 points, folks, in game 1, 13-6. Since then, they put up 76 in games. They put up 55, 50 in games, 69, 60. They just won a game 60-0. This is the Oscar Smith Tigers. This is what they do. They don't normally lose in the second round. I don't have them losing in the second round here. I'm going to have them winning this game 45-20. Moving down the bracket to Ocean Lakes. This is Ocean Lakes versus Thomas Dale. So I know I called it the 757 part of the bracket, but this is an 804 team in Thomas Dale. Thomas Dale is a team that is always there, always in the mix, but can never seem to get over the hump. And I don't think they'll get over the hump against this Ocean Lakes team. I think this Ocean Lakes team is a good team. They're the only team that in that part of the bracket that can compete with Oscar Smith. I think they win this game 35-13. Moving in to the bottom half of the bracket. This is Prince William and Fredericksburg / Stafford combined, basically. First game, this is going to be a really, really good one. If you have nowhere to go, let's say your school's not in the playoffs, let's say you have no rooting interest and you just want to see a good football game, go to one of these two games if you're in Northern Virginia. Freedom versus Massaponax. Now, not much needs to be said about the Freedom Eagles. They have been dominant. Just to give you a thought process of how good they are, last week they put up 60 in a playoff game. The week before they put up 84. The week before that, they put up 63. The week before that, I think they put up 65. That's what the Freedom Eagles do. They score. And you cannot stop their passing attack. On the other hand, you have the Massaponax Panthers. You cannot stop their running attack and their triple option. These are two really good football teams, two dominant football teams. Massaponax, I just talked so well about Mountain View not too long ago. This Massaponax team beat that Mountain View team 45-7. And they're sitting at a 4 seed. They dominated Stonewall Jackson defensively last week. That's going to be a really good football game, man. And man, that's tough for me to call. I'll say that Freedom will win this football game, but it'll be a close one. And it'll be a lot lower scoring than 60 or 80 points. I'll tell you that much. But I will say Freedom will win this football game by a score of 24-20. It'll be close. Be right down to the wire. Another good one. The Patriot Pioneers versus the Colonial Forge Eagles. Colonial Forge has a championship defense. I'm telling you. It is a championship quality defense. Bottom line. They shut down opponents all year long. They gave Highland Springs a tough football game. Their defense is what got them in that game. Their offense has struggled at times this year, but their defense is what has won them football games. What has won Patriot football games this year? That running attack in Tim Baldwin. However, I do feel Tim Baldwin will be running right into a tough Colonial Forge defense. And the last time Tim Baldwin wasn't able to get going was way back in week 2. They lost to Mountain View 37-6. This Colonial Forge Eagles team beat that Mountain View team 24-13. Obviously, I don't normally do transitive wins, and that's not what I'm going to do here. But I just think Colonial Forge is a better football team, man. I know Patriots 9-1, but when you look at Colonial Forge's 2 losses, who are they to? Oh, they're to Freedom, a state championship quality team. Went to the state championship. They lost by 3. Oh, to Highland Springs, 4-time defending state champion. They have a good chance to go to the state championship again. They lost by 7. You look at Patriots, 1 loss. Mountain View's good. I don't think they're Freedom. I don't think they're Highland Springs. And they lost 37-6. I'm going to go Colonial Forge in this game. It's a do or die game, so Patriots not going to roll over for sure. I'm going to go Colonial Forge 30, Patriot 17. Moving over to what is basically the Fairfax County side of the bracket. All 8 of these games are Northern Virginia, Fairfax, Alexandria type teams. Number 1 versus TC Williams. Number 1 South County versus TC Williams. TC Williams has had a good year this year. Explosive year. They have that great indoor facility to play games at. But that's not where they're playing this week. They're playing at South County. And South County is just so good. They're just so dominant, man. They are a scary team for anybody to go against. And I have South County winning this game. I think they're going to put a lot of points on the board. I think they're going to win this game 42-17. And we have probably one of the better feel-good stories in high school football in this next matchup when we talk about the Mount Vernon Majors versus the Lake Braddock Bruins. Mount Vernon, how about that? A few years ago, this was a team that didn't win football games. Didn't win any. They didn't win any games. And now here they are sitting at 10-1. They won their district this year. They won 10 in a row. Their only loss was to a good Hilton team. Very close game. They could be sitting, they are a point away from sitting at 11-0 this week. How about that for Mount Vernon? Lake Braddock, of course, really good. Just won their game 42-14. Billy Edwards, the quarterback, man, what a player he is. This is a good Lake Braddock team. These are 2 good football teams that are going to be going at it this weekend. Man, that's another exciting game. Even though Mount Vernon is the higher seed, it seems like if they were to win this football game, it would kind of be an upset, doesn't it? That's what it kind of feels like, even though technically it's not. Technically, they're sitting at 10-1. Technically, their only loss is by 1 point. By 7 points, my bad. That's what legitimate football teams do, is they win. But it just seems like it would be an upset if they won. And at the end of the day, I'm going with the upset here. I'm going Mount Vernon 28-24, but they're at home. It's not really an upset, man. And those guys from the highway, man, that would be a big time game between them and South County. Now moving down to the last 2 games that we're going to cover, Westfield versus South Lakes. Westfield, man, Westfield is Westfield. What can you say? Right? This is who they are. This is where they play. And similar to what I just said about Oscar Smith, they don't lose in the second round. It's not a shot at South Lakes. South Lakes has had a good year. They had a great game, an exciting game last week against Chantilly, winning 43-40. That's a good team out there in Reston. But I got to go with the team that has done it consistently, with the coaching staff that has done it consistently. These guys don't lose in the second round, man. I got to go with Westfield by a score of 35-7. And then the rough and tough Madison Warhawks versus the Yorktown Patriots. Listen, Yorktown is 10-1. All right, those teams in Arlington don't get as much respect as other, Northern Virginia teams. They don't get as much respect as, the West Fairfax County teams. They don't get as much respect as Prince William County and Loudoun County teams. They don't. But they're 10-1. And 10-1 is a hard thing to do. Now, when you look at some of their wins, are their wins, as impressive? Do they have a big one? Is Wakefield, McLean, Herndon, those guys, obviously aren't going to get you as much points as, say, the teams that Madison has played and beat this year. But Yorktown cannot be slept on because, again, 10-1 is 10-1, folks. They won 10 games out of 11. That's hard to do. However, Madison, you see what they just did to Centerville. They shut them down and they got points. This is a good Madison Warhawk football team, man. And listen, we've seen Madison versus Westfield in the past. I believe you should get ready for it again. I have Madison winning this football game. I think their defense just shuts down Yorktown. I think they suffocate them all game long. I think they win this football game 40-3. So that's going to be it for this week's episode of the Dominion Sports Football Broadcast. Hey, come back, man. We'll be back here. We'll make another episode next week for all the regional championship games, and they're going to be some good ones if all my predictions hold true. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.